They mocked her at luxury party until they came to know she was Billionaire's wife. Sienna Price had married Adrian Hawthorne quietly, privately. No media, no announcements, no glittering engagement photos or interview. He loved her fiercely, obsessively, with a devotion she still struggled to believe was real. But on paper, to the world, to the cameras always circling the Hawthorne empire, she didn't exist. She didn't mind. Not at first. She'd told him she didn't care about the spotlight. She'd told him she didn't need the grand gestures or the flashing lights to know she was loved. And he believed her. Or maybe he wanted to believe her. Still, despite the marriage license tucked safely in the bottom drawer of his study, despite the ring on her finger, despite the way he held her at night as though she was the only thing in his world that was real, she continued working part-time as a private driver. Her friends teased her for it. Her co-workers were confused. The world, if they had known, would have called her insane. But Sienna needed the work, not for the money, but for the grounding. Driving reminded her who she was before Adrian Hawthorne. The billionaire, the empire builder, the headlines, the legacy had stormed into her life. Driving reminded her she wasn't some delicate ornament hidden in a penthouse. Driving reminded her she wasn't a shadow attached to a powerful man. She was her own person, strong, independent, capable, or so she kept insisting to herself. Because sometimes when Adrian pulled her into his arms and the world outside went silent, she felt herself disappear into his orbit, and the sensation terrified her as much as it thrilled her. Tonight, they were supposed to arrive at the Hawthorne Foundation annual charity gala together. Except Adrian had a late meeting with the board about the upcoming acquisition, and Sienna hated arriving late to anything. So she texted him, "I'll meet you there. Don't rush." She changed into the dress he'd chosen for her, a sleek black silk gown with a fitted waist and delicate straps that made her look like she belonged on the cover of a magazine. He'd left it hanging on her side of the closet with a handwritten note tucked inside the bodice. "For tonight. For me. Hey." She smiled when she found it, pressing the note to her chest before slipping the dress on. She arrived early, earlier than the staff, it seemed, because the valet hadn't even finished setting up the velvet rope. When she stepped inside the grand ballroom, guests were already moving about with cocktails in hand, talking loudly, laughing even louder, their jewelry glittering underneath the crystal chandelier. And that's when it happened, the moment that would split her night and her heart in two. A tall blonde woman in a silver gown waved her hand at Sienna without even looking fully at her. "Excuse me? Can you take this?" the woman said, holding out her empty champagne flute. Sienna blinked. "Oh, I'm not." But before she could finish the sentence, the woman placed a glass into her hand, not gently, but the way someone would hand off trash. "Good," she said, already turning away. "Next time, be quicker." A few guests around them laughed softly, like they shared an inside joke. Heat crawled up Sienna's neck. She looked down at herself. Black dress, no name tag, no apron, glass in hand. Still, they saw what they wanted to see. She placed the glass on a vacant tray and stepped aside, trying to calm her heartbeat. But then another man approached her, tall, dark-haired, obnoxiously confident. "Red wine," he said, tapping her arm as though she were a vending machine. "And wipe that table when you're done." She stared at him, stunned. "Sir, I don't work." He shoved a $20 bill at her. "There you go. Try to look more professional next time." His voice carried across the ballroom. Laughter followed it. Sienna felt air leave her lungs, a silent, invisible punch to the chest. She swallowed, held her ground, lifted her chin, because she refused to let strangers see her break. But inside, something cracked. Actually cracked. Because in that moment, she didn't feel like a wife. She didn't feel like a partner. She didn't feel seen at all. She felt invisible, just as the world saw her, or failed to. She tried to walk away, to blend into crowd, to find a quiet corner before tears pricked her eyes. But the humiliation clung to her, heavy and sharp. Then came the final blow. Two women, glittering, elegant, the kind who had personal shoppers and champagne at brunch, looked her up and down. "Is she new?" one whispered loudly. "Clearly," the other replied. "Look how she stands. So stiff. She probably came from a budget agency. As if she were a temporary employee on borrowed clothes." Sienna turned away quickly, fingers trembling, her throat tight. She pulled out her phone to text Adrian. Just 2 words. "I'm here." Maybe he would come earlier. Maybe she wouldn't have to stand here alone, pretending she wasn't drowning inside. But before she could hit send, a hand snatched the phone from her. "We don't allow staff to be on their personal devices during the gala," the coordinator snapped, dropping Sienna's phone into a small wooden basket with a sign that read, "Staff Tech Collection. Pick up at exit." Sienna's jaw dropped. "Excuse me, that's my rules," the woman said curtly, "especially for new hires. But I'm not. Whatever. Put on a smile and get moving. The guests don't wait." Sienna's chest tightened painfully. She stood there frozen for a breath, maybe 2, feeling small, discarded, erased. She had married the man who owned this gala, owned this ballroom, owned this entire building, and still she was nothing to them. Her vision blurred. She blinked rapidly. Not here, not in front of them. She would not break here. She took a shaky step backward, searching for the restroom or any escape, and that's when the ballroom doors swung open. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "He's here." And then she heard a voice she could recognize anywhere. Deep, rich, unapologetically commanding. "Where's my wife?" Silence rippled through the room. Heads turned. Hearts stopped. Sienna did too. Adrian Hawthorne, 6'3" of flawless danger and effortless power, strode inside in a tailored black tuxedo that fit him like it had been stitched onto his skin. His tie was slightly loosened, his jaw sharp, his hair pushed back as though he'd run a hand through it in frustration. He looked like a man coming straight from war, and in a way he was. His eyes scanned the ballroom, sharp, searching, frantic in a way only she knew meant he was worried. Her heartbeat tripped. He locked onto her instantly, the way he always did, like she was the only person in the room who mattered. He started toward her, then stopped mid-step, because he finally saw what the room saw. His wife, dressed like a guest, standing alone, without her phone, holding a tray someone had shoved into her hand, and the $20 bill still crumpled between her fingers. Adrian's expression didn't change slowly. It snapped. His eyes darkened, his jaw locked, his shoulders hardened, and a quiet, terrifying rage filled the air around him. Several guests followed his line of sight and actually stepped back. He walked toward her like he was walking toward a crime scene. "Sienna." His voice was low, lethal. She swallowed, her lip trembling despite her best effort. "Adrian." His hand brushed her cheek, thumb gently wiping a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Who did this to you?" he whispered. The question wasn't a question. It was a warning, a promise. She shook her head because she knew what he was capable of when pushed. "It's not. I'm fine. I shouldn't have come early." "No," he said sharply. "You should have walked in with me. I shouldn't have been late." His guilt twisted his expression, but his voice stayed calm, too calm, which was exactly how Adrian sounded right before someone's world collapsed. The coordinator rushed toward them, out of breath. "Mr. Hawthorne, I can explain." Adrian didn't even look at her at first. Then he turned, slowly, with a smile so cold the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Yes," he said softly. "Explain to me why you confiscated my wife's phone." The coordinator's jaw dropped. "W-wife?" Gasps scattered across the ballroom. One man choked on his champagne. Someone actually whispered, "Oh my God." The blonde woman who had given Sienna her empty glass almost fainted. Sienna gripped Adrian's hand, trying to calm him, but he gently moved her behind him, shielding her from the room. He raised his voice. Not much, just enough that the words reached every corner. "Allow me to reintroduce her," he said, eyes sweeping across the stunned guest. "Sienna Hawthorne, my wife, my partner, my equal." His jaw clenched. "And the woman you've been mocking, ordering around, insulting, and humiliating for the last half hour." No one spoke. No one breathed. Sienna felt her heart twist painfully, because even though the humiliation burned, his protection, his loyalty, his fury on her behalf made her want to cry for an entirely different reason. But then, when she thought the worst was over, something deeper flickered behind Adrian's eyes. Something heavy, something secret. He held her hand tighter. "Sienna," he said quietly, almost pleadingly, "there's something I need to tell you tonight. Something I should have told you sooner." She looked up at him, throat tight. "What is it?" His Adam's apple bobbed. The rage faded. Fear, real fear, crept into his gaze. "It's about why I've kept our marriage private." Her breath caught, not out of shock, but out of dread, because suddenly everything was about to change. The gala should have ended hours ago, but the world inside the Hawthorne Foundation Hall felt suspended, as if time itself had been around the moment Adrian walked in and shattered every assumption in the room. Sienna could still feel the warmth of his hand wrapped around hers as he pulled her away from the cluster of horrified socialites. His voice had cut through the room like a blade made of fire and ice. "She is not staff. She is my wife." The echo of it still thundered in her chest. But that wasn't what stayed with her most. It was the look in his eyes. Not anger, not embarrassment. Fear. A fear she had never seen in him before. Now, hours later, she stood alone in the quiet upper balcony of the hall, overlooking the glittering city skyline through a wall of glass. Her heart still ached, still trembled, still held onto the sting of humiliation like a bruise beneath her rib. But the deeper ache, the one she tried not to touch, was a question she couldn't shake. Why didn't he want their marriage public? Not the real reason, the one he told her, but the truth he was hiding from her. She leaned her forehead against the cool glass, her breath fogging the pain. She didn't hear Adrian approach, only felt the warmth of his presence as it pressed gently against her back. His reflection appeared behind hers in the window, tall, calm, composed, devastatingly handsome in his black velvet tux, with a controlled expression that meant he was anything but calm inside. "Sienna," he murmured, lowering his head beside hers, "you shouldn't be up here alone." "I needed space to breathe," she whispered, "and I needed to make sure you were okay." She didn't answer. She wasn't ready to lie, and she wasn't ready to fall apart. Adrian slid his arms around her from behind, wrapping her into his chest, anchoring her. Tell me what you're thinking. Do you really want to know? She asked quietly. Yes, he breathed. Always. She swallowed. It hurt, she said. Not just what they said. Not just how they treated me. Her voice wavered. But knowing that they treated me that way because they didn't know who I was. His arms tightened. And if they had known, she continued, they would have treated me differently. Suddenly I'd be worth respecting, worth speaking to, worth seeing. She closed her eyes. But I was the same person. Nothing changed except the truth. Sienna, I don't want to live a life where people only treat me kindly because of your name. He turned her gently in his arms so she was facing him. That's not your life, Adrian said, his voice low and pleading. That's not who you are. And I promise you, I would never let anyone reduce you to that. You already did, she whispered. The words hit him like a strike. He stepped back as if needing space to absorb it. Sienna, that's not fair. It is, she said softly. You kept our marriage private. And I told you it was fine. But tonight proved it wasn't. Not for me. Not anymore. Adrian exhaled sharply, jaw tightening. There were reasons, he said. I know, she replied. I want you to tell me the real ones now. His eyes closed for a moment, as if bracing himself for pain. Then he opened them and whispered, come with me. He took her hand. And this time, she didn't pull away. He led her through the empty gala hall, past glowing chandeliers and abandoned champagne glasses, down the marble corridor, into the private wing of the building, a place she had never been inside. It wasn't open to the public, and even at home, he rarely spoke about what was behind these doors. He unlocked the final room at the end of the hall. Inside was not an office, not a vault, not a private lounge. It was a hospital room, not a real one, but a meticulously recreated medical suite. Soft light, a single bed, monitors, cabinets of carefully labeled medication. And lying on the bed was a woman, older, frail, hooked to tubes and machine. Her silver hair was spread across the pillow like fallen moonlight. Sienna's breath caught in her throat. Who? My mother, Adrian said, walking to the bedside. Sienna stared. She had seen Hawthorne family photos before, charity galas, business meetings, magazine covers. But this woman, this fragile figure, had never been in any of them. She's alive? Sienna whispered. Barely, Adrian said. And no one outside this family knows. Sienna's heart thudded. She has a degenerative neurological disease, he continued, voice low. If the press found out, if the board found out, they would use it to force her out as chairwoman. Sienna's eyes widened. And if she's removed, Adrian said, I lose majority control of the empire. It hit her, the secrecy. The fear. The reason he fought so hard to keep appearances intact. No scandal. No surprises. No stories the press could sink their teeth into. Not until his mother stepped down publicly, and he was officially named her successor. He looked at Sienna with raw vulnerability she had never seen before. You becoming my wife secretly, he whispered, was not about hiding you. It was about protecting her. Protecting the company. Protecting everything until the transition was complete. Sienna felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from understanding. Why didn't you tell me? She asked softly. Because I didn't want that weight on your shoulders, he said, voice shaking. You've carried enough in your life. I didn't want you to carry mine too. She looked at him, really looked at him. The billionaire who the world believed was invincible. But he wasn't. He was a son trying to save his mother. A man trying to hold together an empire built on fragile balance. A husband trying desperately not to burden the woman he loved. Sienna stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his cheek. You're not a burden, she said gently. And I'm not someone who needs protecting. His eyes softened with something like relief and something like regret. I know, he murmured, but I'm terrified of losing you. Then don't push me away, she whispered. Bring me in. He closed his eyes, forehead pressing against her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the monitor beside the bed. When he finally opened his eyes, they were no longer guarded. They were full, raw, honest. I'm done hiding, Adrian whispered. From this night forward, the world will know you're my wife. Sienna's throat tightened. And my partner, he added, in everything, including this. He gestured to the room, to the secret he had carried alone. If you'll stand with me, he said, voice deep with hope and fear. I want you beside me through all of it. The transition, the company, my mother, the future, everything. Her answer came without hesitation. I'm already standing with you, she whispered. I just need you to let me. A slow, grateful smile broke across his face. A smile that held no control, no restraint, no billionaire polish. Just love, real and unfiltered. He pulled her into his arms, and she melted into him, feeling the ache of the evening transform into something entirely different, something healing. Then, softly, she asked a question that had haunted her all night. "Adrian, tonight at the gala, did the way they treated me embarrass you?" He shook his head instantly. "Sienna, I have never been more ashamed of them. Not you. You walked into that room with dignity. They couldn't buy with all their wealth combined. If anything," he cupped her face gently, "I've never been prouder of you." He kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then her lip, slowly, tenderly, as if reminding her of every moment he had chosen her long before the world knew her name. A soft groan from the bed made them pull apart. His mother stirred, eyes flickering open. "Adrian," she whispered weakly. He rushed to her side. "I'm here, Mom," he said, taking her hand. Her gaze drifted past him to Sienna. A soft, knowing smile touched the older woman's lip. "You brought her," she whispered faintly. Sienna froze. "You knew about me?" she asked softly. The older woman nodded. "He talks about you in every visiting hour, every day." Her eyes softened. "He loves you more than he knows how to admit." Adrian swallowed hard. "Mom, don't hide her anymore," she murmured. "You've hidden enough." Her hand found Sienna. "Take care of him," she whispered. "My son carries too much." Sienna felt tears sting her eyes. "I will," she whispered. "I promise." The older woman drifted back to sleep peaceful. Adrian looked at Sienna with a gaze full of gratitude and something deeper, something like fate. They stood there for a long time, hand in hand, in the quiet glow of the medical monitors. Whatever came next, the media frenzy, the empire battle, the family consequences, they would face it together. No more hiding, no more being mistaken for someone who didn't belong, no more humiliation, only truth, only partnership, only love. And as they walked out of that secret room together, Adrian whispered one final promise into her ear. "Tomorrow, the world will know your name, because it deserves to." And for the first time that night, Sienna believed it, and believed in herself, and believed in them, completely